Right, and you're good to go, Alex.
We are. Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming. This is TSPLOST, and we've been through several orientations. Most of y'all have been able to get to at least one of those. I appreciate staff doing so much work to get us kind of brought up to speed on how this works. Several of y'all have been on one of these or have been involved in county committees and things, so it's always nice. Today is our first day of presentation. I often mistakenly call this a voting day. It is not a voting day. We don't vote on anything today. We'll do that at the end. Once we've seen all of the presentations, then we will get to that. So that'll be down the road. But we're going to have 6 presentations today. These are all presentations by the Athens-Clarke County staff on the projects that they are still wanting to have in the TSPLOST. So it's going to be a 10-minute presentation and then a 5-minute question answer with them. And then they move. We got 5 minutes for the next presenter to come in and get set up, and then 10 minutes. And we'll just go through, I believe it's 6 presentations today, and we'll see how all that works. At the end of today, we'll also just have a little bit of time to ask questions among ourselves. It can be about anything. We're learning as we go a little bit. So we want to make sure everybody's comfortable with what we're doing, how it went. And so we'll take a little time. We should have a little bit of time after the end of the 6th presenter. And so please ask questions then as well regarding the committee or what we just saw, anything like that. That's a good time to bring that up. And let's see, staff has passed out. If you look at this right here, I think Jeb's looking at it. Most of y'all are looking at this. What we want to do is stay focused on the transportation SPLOST, on things that involve what this money is meant to go through and do, what the mayor and commission would like it to do to be within the goals that they have set up. So I had asked Josh if he could get these put out, because I kind of like to look at things in reference while I'm being presented or while something's going on. So if they say something, I can just kind of check and make sure my mind is in. Do with it as you will. I'm not going to tell you how to study. I'm not going to tell you how to listen. We're all grown-ups here. You hopefully have your own method of doing that. And mine is probably not the one you want to follow. So anything else I'm leaving out, Josh? Oh, yes, thank you. Let's see. If you've had a chance to review the minutes, do I have a motion? Motion? Oh, okay, you motion, Stephen.
Second.
And you seconded. Okay, all in favor of the minutes? All not in favor? Okay, just making sure. All right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to jump in to review previous discussion. So anything you've got?
The handouts that you have in front of you, we've already talked about one of them. It's the things that Mayor and Commission have asked you to pay attention to during these presentations. And since the screen is a little hard to see sometimes, you have a copy of all the slides that you're going to see tonight. So you can go through and follow along with the presentation. Think of a question during the presentation, just please write it down, because there might not be time in that 5 minutes after the presentation to go over it, but we can get that question answered later. So just to make sure that's fresh, write it down during the presentation and we can make sure to get that addressed. That's all I have. Started with the first.
Okay, we're ready. And since we sort of have dinner, most of us have eaten, but if we would, during that break, is a good time if you need water or something then, rather than getting up while someone's trying to present. That can be a little distracting. But be able to do that, that would be a nice courtesy. Okay, so I would ask the first presenter, if you're ready. Chris.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Stephen Bailey. I'm the Director of Public Works here in Athens. You're going to see 6 presentations all by my department, so get ready for a fun night. First, hey, thank you very much for being a part of this. I know this is a large time commitment and a lot of late nights, a lot of long meetings and big decisions, but it makes a huge difference for our community. As we've seen, the type of projects that come out of this are excellent. So thank you. Thank you for being a part of that. So for this first program that I'm going to talk to you about, we're talking about intersections first. To start off, we really need to talk about Athens and traffic safety. Intersections are some of the most dangerous locations on roadways simply because of the number of conflict points that they create. It's where motorists and pedestrians and cyclists all converge. Without good design, intersections can be convoluted and hazardous. Liz, if you want to skip ahead to that summary of need slide. Yeah. The next one. So in the past few years, our staff have been working with Georgia DOT and the Federal Highway Association to create a local road safety plan that identifies crash factors here in Athens that are overrepresented. And that just means that we have an abnormally large number of these types of crashes when compared to other communities in Georgia and across the nation. Intersection related crashes were at the top of that list. So as you can see, compared to the rest of Georgia, Athens has a larger percentage of intersection-related crashes and a larger rate of fatalities occurring at our intersection. In the past 5 years worth of data, this has added up to over 17,000 crashes and causing 212 serious injuries and 51 fatalities. So we're asking for funding to create a data-driven prioritization model to identify and rank our worst intersections, and then to focus on constructing up to 3 of those intersections or reconstructing up to 3 of those intersections to provide safety, level of service, and multimodal improvements. As with previous SPLOST and TSPLOST, we could also leverage these funds to provide a local grant match for big state or federal construction grants. So in order to stretch our funding and tackle a larger number of these projects. In fact, we're actually poised right now to do that for the intersection of Chase Street and Loop 10 through a state TAP grant, that's Transportation Alternatives Program. If this T-SPLOST project's approved, we could immediately apply for that grant and stand to win upwards of $8 to $10 million in grant funds for that project. So we've been told we have a very high chance of being awarded as we've also already gone through a similar successful grant process for the design of that project. As I mentioned before, this intersection program is completely in line with our local road safety plan, as well as our community's commitment to Vision Zero, which is an internationally promoted concept that states the only acceptable number of traffic fatalities is 0. Next one. So we won't know exactly which intersections or what type of intersection improvements we'll be building until that prioritization matrix is complete, but we wanted to give you some examples of the type of work that this would entail. So all of the elements listed on this slide would promote both safety and efficiency improvements. There could be all solutions like enhancing signal timing or improving communication between one signal and an adjacent signal. Could also be larger improvements like realigning a skewed intersection or even changing an existing signal into a roundabout. We'll also be looking for opportunities to improve access for non-vehicular traffic with things like crosswalks, bike markings, and refuge islands. This picture has a good example of a refuge island outside of on each leg of the roundabout there. Next. Okay, so tonight you're going to hear about a number of our projects which are countywide and data-driven, as like I mentioned before. We try to make sure that we're putting the community's resources where they're most needed, similar to the decisions that you all as a group are having to make to prioritize all of the project proposals that you're going to see over the next weeks and months. We do this constantly in each of our specific infrastructure programs. We weigh one project versus another one. In each instance, we try to use unbiased data to determine where the need is greatest. So in many cases, we already have those prioritization matrices built for our programs. You'll hear about signs and signals later, signal equipment later, which have kind of formulas built for prioritization. For this intersection program, we need to start by creating such a matrix. So I wanted to show you the type of data that will most likely be used to create the prioritization matrix formula and give you a historic example of what that looks like. So on the screen, you're going to see criteria that was used in our initial 2018 intersection ranking program when we first attempted to float a TSPLOST project for this. The final tool, the final prioritization tool that will be created is going to weigh safety, efficiency, and equity through factors like historic crash data, congestion information, and identifying underserved areas and vulnerable population. And then looking for potential multimodal connections for transit users, cyclists, and pedestrians. Whatever criteria we do end up with, we want to make sure that we provide feedback opportunities for the community and our elected officials so that we all can agree on the methodology before we actually go out and start building things. But as I mentioned before, the requested budget would allow us to contract with a firm to develop the prioritization tool, also design and build 2 to 3 major improvements to the worst intersections identified by that tool, and then potentially provide an opportunity for grant matching funds for our intersection projects so we can leverage those relatively small amount of local dollars to secure large amounts of federal and state dollars. I imagine one of the hardest parts of your decision as a committee is going to be to determine over the next few months which of these projects will create the greatest benefits to our community. I just wanted to spell out clearly that this project will, at its core, work to enhance safety, reduce crashes, and improve the efficiency of all the roadways in Athens County, starting with the areas in the most need of assistance. By awarding this project, you'd not only be allowing us to improve a few intersections over the next 5 years, you'd also be setting the stage to continue to use this prioritization tool to secure funding at our worst intersections over the next few decades. So basically, you're building the foundation for a much bigger program. If the program's not selected, staff will continue to try and find other funding sources to implement such a program, but we have found that SPLOST and TSPLOST are really the most successful funding mechanisms for these initiatives. The general fund, which is supported by property taxes, just isn't robust enough to bear those kinds of program costs, while also supporting all of the hundreds of other important community initiatives that it supports. So if not funded, we continue to see those disproportionately high intersection crash rates in Athens that I mentioned previously. We'd also continue to be more reactive to failures at intersections, whether that's just increased congestion or something more severe like an injury or fatality, instead of proactively addressing these locations before the next failure occurs. I think I've talked through these considerations on previous slides, but it's worth repeating that the program's built around providing equitable improvements throughout the community, focusing first on areas where the need's greatest. These projects would also provide benefits to all of our roadway users, that's motorists and active transportation alike, so that we're protecting our most vulnerable population. Tried to put a checklist here to show all the different strategic commitments that this touches on. This checks 11 of those 12 strategic commitment areas that y'all are taking under consideration. I'd even argue that some of the intersections in Athens serve as gateways between us and our neighboring cities and counties, and therefore would provide intercity travel improvements as well, and maybe check that 12th box. But it certainly touches on safety, health, multimodal access, and clean and sustainable infrastructure. I think that is it from me. Yeah, so you can open it up for questions. Certainly revisit any of the slides that might be helpful to see.
Even the $8 million grant that we have the potential of getting, is that just for Chase or for that?
That's that intersection, the interchange intersection at Chase and 10. Yeah. So right now, we currently have a TAP grant for the design of that intersection. This would be the next phase to do the construction of it.
What about the one on Harvard Mathis Road?
That one, GDOT is actually working to correct that. They're creating an R-cut, is that the term?
Right.
Yeah, so they're working on that, and it is actually going into, they're planning it for, I don't know what year they put it for, but It's been approved for
Today, yes. So it's gonna be very soon, hopefully very soon.
That's a need.
yes, it is.
On these bad intersections, how many of them, I guess, interact with GDOT?
Probably quite a few. So we were looking at a few different ways to run the model, and we won't know, until we really go into the deep details of that intersection matrix. But if you just think in terms of the volume of vehicles going through our roadways and intersections, the ones with the largest volumes and therefore the largest number of crashes probably are going to be where state routes intersect our local routes. Yeah.
Two questions. Did you say that on a per capita, whatever the term was, it was used, we're the worst in the state in terms of crashes?
We are one of the worst. I don't think we're the worst. What I was really saying was that compared to, let's see, Liz, if you go back to probably the third or fourth slide, compared to the rest of Georgia, we look at, where our stats stand out and not in a good way is the number of crashes or the percentage of crashes that we have at intersections are so much higher than the percentage of crashes that other municipalities in Georgia have at intersections.
Second question was, did you say that this was something that was asked for in the 2018 SPLOST?
It didn't get awarded in that 2018.
Thank you.
I have one question for you, David. To kind of piggyback on his, about the statistics, those, I know you all take into consideration a lot of different things, but Athens-Clarke County is a college town.
Yes.
Did that have any effect, or I know you can't track all of it, but with the percentage being as high as it is?
Certainly. In fact, some of those other crash statistics, so we look at those outliers of where we are worse than other counties. Some of the things really play into that same demographic. So distracted driving was one of the big ones. People on their cell phone who are, driving under the influence was another one. These really do kind of spell out, hey, we're a college town, right?
Thank you.
You said you had another.
No, I was just commenting.
Okay.
I say, he's about right about the intersection part, especially, in areas where it's mostly where a lot of our companies are, like Athenia Road, and I had two people hit me twice just coming through this intersection. That was it last year. So it's also the problem with that is that have everybody noticed the insurance from Athens area? Our insurance went up $160 in most.
Right.
Because the wrecks we have.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, thinking about economic factors of fixing some of this, right? Yes, sir.
Do y'all have a list of intersections, or you just want a bucket of money other than the Chase Street?
Sure. So like I said, we do know, we have a lot of data on all of our signalized intersections. We have 176 signalized intersections. But we do need to create that prioritization tool to tell us what are the top 5, 10, so that we know where we want to put that money first. That's why we're saying, in addition to Chase, which is a great opportunity for a grant, we need to identify what are the other 2 to 3 intersections that we could immediately put this money towards. So that's the very first thing that would happen if this got approved, is we'd work with a consultant to build that tool.
William?
Okay, on the equity considerations,
Yes, sir.
like you can break down number 3, the safe pedestrian bicycle crossings, the same thing, or are we talking about building a bike path?
It just depends on the location. Sometimes it would be kind of the same thing. Other times you might need to have separate. It all just depends. What is the context of that area, right? Is there already a bike lane there, or is there just a heavy need for pedestrian footing? Each intersection would be looked at on a unique basis to see what's needed there. Yes, sir.
So when I think of safe pedestrian crossing, I'm thinking going from one side to the other. When I think of bicycle crossing, I'm thinking of a bicycle lane. Do I have it correct?
Yes, sir. In a lot of cases, that's what it would look like.
Okay, so those 3 could be broken down in A and B, I assume.
Sure. That's a good way.
okay? And
All right, guys, I'm sorry. That's the conclusion of this 5 minutes for this question segment. If you do have any more questions for Stephen, please do write them down. Send them to me afterward, and I will make sure that we get them sent over to him and have them answered, okay?
Thanks, y'all.
Stephen.
Yes,
number two, so I won't have to write it.
I appreciate it, y'all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.
Katie, I think is next. Oh, you have like a.
And it. While Katie's getting set up, you guys can deliberate amongst yourselves if you'd like, or take a
We got
break.
5 minutes to chat or ask questions. What else was not?
Get your second question answered. What was it?
How would you rate or rank historically underserved communities? And what's the multi-model user?
Great question. Yep, we'll get that and get you an answer.
Okay.
Gosh, we just keep track of questions for us.
Ma'am, what will you be speaking about?
Safe routes programs.
Thank you.
Yeah, I realize I'm gonna, not a lot of time to answer all those. Sure.
Well, yeah.
I know that.
Oh, that's what I made it right, yes.
No. Chicken chili.
Exactly right. I was gonna ask you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good.
Had a real estate finance. And my group mates, we're planning on doing this morning, all my group mates, like, we need to all have it done by 5 p.m.
Because
So I have to finish.
I quit.
Well, so.
Or you can just stare at me and I will know it to be below. You got stuff.
I mean, this.
So are we good, starting in about 1 minute? Everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of, I think it'd be.
Everybody good to go ahead and start now? All right. You ready up there, Liz, to clock? All right, Safe Routes Program.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Goodrum. I'm the Vision Zero planner here with Transportation and Public Works. And our proposed program is Safe Routes. And yeah, next slide. You may have heard of Safe Routes to Schools programs. That's an established approach nationwide to make it easier to get to school safely, especially by walking and rolling. And we've added 2 other key destinations, which are parks and transit. So safe routes to schools, safe routes to parks, safe routes to transit. We've identified these because they're such key community destinations and they serve the most vulnerable users, which are those who are walking and rolling and taking transit. If you haven't already heard the term vulnerable road users, you will hear it again. It refers to people traveling without vehicles, basically outside heavy motorized vehicles. So walking, taking transit on bikes, scooters, wheelchairs, those wagons that you pull your kids in on the sidewalk. So beginning with schools, why we chose these three kinds of destinations. Schools, obviously, a lot of children don't drive, and so making safer routes creates important opportunities for independence for kids and exercise for kids. Same with parks, they're something really important that our county provides, and everyone should have access to them. They're important for all ages, for children, and then for transit. People using our transit system often don't have other choices. So they're the people in Athens who spend the most time on our roadways and in a vulnerable state. So this program, again, focuses on active transportation, people walking and rolling. Next slide. Yeah, we really want to make it easier to get to the key amenities that the county provides and easier for everyone. More people will be able to use our transit system if there's a continuous sidewalk to the closest bus stop, for example. It's really important for health. If more people feel safe using active transportation, they'll have access to green space, exercise facilities, and again, safety there are a lot of people who have no choice not to drive because of their income or ability. A lot of older people don't feel comfortable driving. And then if we do encourage more walking and rolling, that's going to mean fewer drivers on the roads, which is better for the people who do drive in terms of congestion. It's better for everyone in terms of air quality, lower emissions, cleaner air for us all to breathe. Next slide. So people walking and rolling are really overrepresented in fatal and serious injury crashes in Clarke County and around the country. And they've been increasing nationwide in the past years. Just a few statistics for you. We've had on average 14 fatalities a year in the last 5 years and a lot of injuries on our roadways. So, anything we can do to help that is always good to create safer roadways. What else? Yeah, and we want to make it fair to everyone to access our really important destinations. That's why we identified schools, parks, and transits. So on to funding. We've got the breakdown of the cost requests for this project and examples of the typical improvements that are needed for safety in these situations. We're requesting 3 million for schools and for parks and transit, 1.5 million each. Some examples of the types of improvements would be closing sidewalk gaps, adding ADA ramps for people who use wheelchairs or pushing strollers, lighting, being able to cross busy streets more safely. For schools, we asked for a little more because we already have a school audit program that's been going on for a few years, and we've identified projects and have a backlog that are ready to construct if the funding becomes available. For parks and transit, we'll do additional studies and identification. With transit, we're in communication with the transit staff. So they're really helping us identify the needs for their users and getting to bus stops. And they are also thinking of applying for some grants. So this funding could be used as a local match to leverage the grant funding even further to increase our impact. Next slide. A few notes about each of the three categories. For Safe Routes to School, we focus on the area around school that's within a 10-minute walk or roll. And so we would work with the state Safe Routes to School program that exists already in Georgia. And to select projects, we use criteria such as the projects that would just serve more people. If there's already a lot of people in the area that would walk or would bike if they felt safe doing so, that's the kind of thing that would get priorities. All of our prioritizations are data driven at this point, not request driven. So we will look at all these scores such as population density, car ownership around the destination. Next information. on the Safe Routes to School programs and their benefits for decreasing injuries in children, and increasing walking, of course, is really important for our health. Next, on parks. So Athens-Clarke County was actually one of the first 10 pilot sites in the country for the nationwide Safe Routes to School, or Safe Routes to Parks program, and resulted in a safer access created to Herd Park now in East Athens. Daniel, who was in Leisure Services at the time, was behind that. And like schools, we look at Safe Routes to Parks within that 10-minute walk shed or bike shed at parks. And so the National Recreation and Park Association actually has a framework that helps us choose which kinds of projects to fund to increase access to parks for the most people. Next, a little bit more about park access as some elements of making it easier to use our parks. So these are the kinds of guidelines that we would follow. And finally, safe routes to transit. Next slide. So the number one complaint that Daniel gets is that our sidewalks along transit routes are not comfortable or absent. So this is about getting to bus stops, crossing busy streets, getting to your destination after you get off the bus. And transit users, we know, are the people who spend the most time on our roadways in the whole county. You know, they're walking, they're waiting for the bus, they're biking. They often don't have access to cars and other ways of getting around. So again, when it comes to prioritizing these projects, we're in close contact with the transit staff. So they tell us which bus stops, which routes get the highest use, and they get a lot of good feedback from their customers as to safety challenges. So next. So if we don't fund this, I think more crashes and injuries will occur on our roadways, especially for children, seniors, and transit users due to unsafe crossings, missing sidewalks, and poor lighting. When it comes to mobility and equity, low-income residents, people with disabilities, and those without cars will struggle to access schools, parks, and transit. So this could widen social and economic disparities.
1 minute remaining.
Thanks. Health and environment, we want more opportunities for in biking to combat high obesity rates, vehicle emissions, and worse air quality. And we want all these, traffic congestion and pollution, and then quality of life and economic impacts. There's great data showing the economic benefits of living in a walkable, bikeable, rollable place. Equity considerations. Again, we always prioritize projects based on how they help people who need it most. We have some really good established procedures for distributing funds in a fair and equitable way. And then finally, I will rush to our Mayor and Commission strategic commitments. It fulfills pretty much all of them, I think, except for the routes to Atlanta.
Your time has elapsed. Thank you, Katie.
On that note, I will take questions along with my colleague Daniel Sizemore. Yes.
Would it be possible, and this may be one for someone else to answer of the group, if part of the project is funded, or is it all of it?
So if it was a partial funding, would we still be able to have a successful program?
Right. And yes, that's the question.
Yeah, and the short answer is yes. Yes, we would. Any amount of money to go towards filling in the safe routes, the need for safe routes, we could use that, whether it's being leveraged for grant funding or just going to specific sidewalk gaps. Because this is a program driven off of analysis, we'd be able to leverage whatever we were awarded.
And one other quick one, 14 fatalities. One life, one too many. But have they been pedestrians hit, walking or bicycling, or children walking to work, or I'm at the school? You have that 14 broken down on what?
Yeah, I actually have that coming up in a presentation. So it's there with between 20, I believe it's 17 and 2023 as a 5-year span. We usually measure these in 5-year spans. There were 13 fatalities averaged per year, and 30% of those were bike or pedestrian. Which overall, among the like 40,000, 50,000 crashes that we've had in Athens in the last 10 years, 1 to 1.5% of all crashes are bike or pedestrian related. So it's a much higher rate of fatal and serious injury. Yeah, nice.
So, you have a percent for public art, which I understand that's required and all of that, but is there any way that could go towards kind of like the bus stops where they do the really creative art pieces with the bus stops so that it's simultaneously the public art, but it's also providing shelter and other things and more resources for me with the.
Yeah, so one of the first steps that will happen with funding is the, I believe it's ACAC, one of the Athens Cultural Affairs Commission. They review all of the TSPLOST projects and that 1%. Some of them aren't necessarily ones that they feel are needed for art, and other ones they identify, yes, we do want public art for this project. And then at that point, that commission will decide how they would like to see that. And that's absolutely something that could happen.
A question, since this is gonna be for like, helping out with routing, school routings, pretty much school and park routing, right? Am I correct?
We look at sidewalks and roads around schools and parks.
Around schools and parks, okay. Is this the first, study on it, or how long has it been a study on it?
We've been doing Safe Routes to Schools program. I think the earliest audit I've seen goes back to 2014, but there's a statewide initiative, and that's more of a programmatic thing with the schools where they report how many people how many kids walk to school. They do like a survey once a year, and not every school does the survey. They kind of have to opt into it. But for our infrastructure projects, I've seen them going back to 2014. Tim, do you know?
2011 was the first time a program covered safe routes. It's been a while.
And typically we'll do safety audits where we go out on the ground on foot with all the experts and people who are in that school, like the principal, and we get to hear all about their experience and the experiences that they've heard from the students, and they will point stuff out that we normally wouldn't be able to see with just our unique perspective. Any other questions?
I've got one then. So you've got this sidewalks to transit, but not to commercial, for instance. And I would think a lot of people want to walk to the store. Is this primarily getting someone from their neighborhood to a bus stop, or did y'all look into that as far as commercial versus transit?
Yeah, so we focused on these three elements because we wanted to really identify where the majority of our most vulnerable road users who are currently on the roads are traversing. I just spoke with Transit today. Like she said, we have pretty open dialogue with them and about this. One of the things that the assistant director was saying was that it's really important to have the walkability, at least along those transit routes. There's an ADA requirement for if you are going to move a stop to make it in a more better situated location, or even reroute a transit route, you have to have ADA accessibility and ADA accessible sidewalks along those routes. So really the side roads, sometimes those are lower volume. I think once we have like the major routes that are transit corridors, we'll say, once those have a steady sidewalk along them, then the secondary kind of priority would be to connect the neighborhoods out to there. Now, if there is like
the town has a
Okay.
list for questions.
I'll just-
So if, Alex, if you have further questions on that, take note of them and we'll communicate and get them clarified. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
You all.
Thank you. All right, we'll take another 5-ish minute break.
Goes.
Which is the first one?
What?
What's the first one on
Here, jacket, by the way.
Which number is, which title?
Would they just be connected?
Vision Zero Action.
Got it.
I put it up here. This is the aspen presentation.
Looks like it.
Yeah, okay. Say I'm not.
Yeah, every bus.
It doesn't matter where it is, based on more people that age at which you get to the bus stop.
Yes. 5.
Me, if the bus stop is in front of the store and just the street generator, what is there? So not looking at commercial or not.
So any of the smart vehicles that talk to each other?
Finish out what I was about to say. Like we're primarily. Actually, let's look at prioritization criteria. If there is like especially type weird adjacent roads coming in.
How did the, you also, I was coming, right?
It's just like, oh, it's.
So you're talking about was that we have been doing safe routes.
No, it's our signals, it'll tell us our signals, I should know how many.
So,
No, we. Projects around, hey, we're about to get a flood. Just the timing for that. It's more about flow. Okay, yeah, thank you.
We can answer any other questions through email, I think.
Yeah, we'll get, I think, the job to you.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Yes.
Traffic loops. Road interfaces, those. That's more about cars that are there.
Elementary side.
We also can track. So I just take it, I will not be able to make it.
Yeah.
And this.
Got that kind of thing.
I know.
But I don't.
I understand when we only have.
Email. We just missed one.
It's wild. I don't know.
But I'm talking about.
Prior.
They don't have the other price for any of these guys. That's what we saw. Okay, there's a possibility.
That area, it's in a neighborhood.
I mean, I hate that, like.
And I'm like, you're right.
It is. Anyway,
Everything's so early. Everything was in. My youngest daughter is very.
Probably
First
everybody.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, we got about another minute, then we'll get rolling.
At least not from us. So,
Yeah.
Like I said, they may be there now, but. Please, want to treat this.
So which presentation is this?
This is gonna be Vision Zero Action Plan Implementation.
Actually, what?
Vision Zero Action Plan
Oh, yeah.
Implementation.
This is number 20 in your.
Okay, number 20. So this will be number 20. I say that with authority. You said it and I had to say it too. I made it real.
I took it as concurrence.
All right, well, if we're all settled in, why don't we get started?
All right. I'm Daniel Sizemore. I'm the Bike Pedestrian Safety Coordinator for Athens-Clarke County within the Transportation Department. Our goal today is to explain how Vision Zero investments will create safer roadways for everyone. So go on to the next slide. Yeah, so this is the Vision Zero Action Plan implementation. Here is a very popular crosswalk we have at night. Our new standard would have this very well lit. We're constantly making improvements. So you may start seeing some of the new RFB crossings popping up soon. All right, next slide. So Athens-Clarke County experiences preventable traffic fatalities and serious injuries due to unsafe road conditions. The current safety efforts are sometimes reactive and fragmented, often limited by funding constraints. Without proactive intervention, usually data-driven, high-risk intersections corridors will continue to pose safety threats. So Vision Zero, which is a resolution that the county adopted in, I believe, 2022, it is a systematic approach to eliminating severe crashes through data-driven safety improvement. So it's kind of multi-pronged approach that it's a worldwide and more recently nationwide designation that cities and municipalities across the world adopted. Next. So the Vision Zero Action Plan is a plan that we are currently working on right now with our consultants. We received a $1 million grant from the federal government in 2022, and that was Safe Streets for All. And ultimately, the goal there is to implement high priority safety projects identified in that Vision Zero Action Plan. So I'm going to be referring to it as a safety action plan. It doesn't have a branding or anything. The bike ped plan is called the Athens in Motion Plan. It's just the safety action plan. And that is the comprehensive plan that we're currently working on that will inform where this funding goes. So that plan is currently under development with a data-driven process to identify and prioritize specific safety projects. While we can't provide a finalized list of projects at this point in time, we are working with the best experts in the field to create a comprehensive plan that will be approved by the mayor and commission in the same way that this funding is approved by mayor and commission. And ultimately, each individual project will also be approved by mayor and commission. So we have a lot of checks and balances to ensure that the funding that you're looking at today and seeing how it gets used is kind of for the people and voted for by the people. So once that plan is approved, this funding will support the implementation of the high priority projects aimed at reducing traffic fatalities and serious injuries. So like I said, it's a multi-pronged approach. We'll talk about some of that on the next slide soon. This project that you're seeing today focuses on major capital improvements. Actually, go ahead and switch to the next slide. Major capital safety improvements. These will be likely at high crash locations. There's a high injury network that we're developing, and there will be a prioritized list of important projects. This is separate from the intersection project, which really looks at both life cycle and safety. This will be major corridors. It could be sections of road. It could be a single intersection. It really depends on what the findings of the safety action plan are. Speed management is another that program. It's high speed directly leads to crashes, and it also, the higher the speed, the higher the severity of the crash. So with that, we have some speed management programs that are in development as well as part of this safety action plan. And this will, so you've probably heard residential traffic management program, if you're familiar with all of our transportation presentations that we do at Mayor and Commission. If not, that's basically a traffic management program within the residential areas that focuses on local roads. Speed management program would focus on arterial and collector roads. So it's ways that we can reduce speeding on those busier streets. This last one is road safety audit implementation. You heard safe routes to schools audits. We also do road safety audits. We have a whole backlog of improvements. That could be anything from, we should put in a traffic signal here, or a traffic circle, or a roundabout, or it could be, we need to put up new chevron signs that are slightly larger because people go faster than the speed limit on this road. And, we had 3 crashes where they departed from the road. We look at the crash data, we go out on site, we walk it, we take pictures, we take notes, and we have all of our experts there to, identify the improvements that need to be done. And those get categorized in short, medium, and long range solutions. Next. So, as you heard in the last presentation, we've had 14, on average, 14 deaths per year on our roadways in Athens-Clarke County. That's just in the last 5 years. This specific piece of data, which I referenced earlier, is from 2013 to 2021, and an average of 13 people are killed each year. So you can see that average has gone up in the last 2 years, just that 5-year average has increased. And then of those 13 people, or of the average of 13 people within those years, pedestrians and bicyclists made up about 30% of those crashes, which is, and then also, as we talked about with the intersection project, where when we look at other outlying components across the board where Athens compares to the rest of the state, our pedestrian fatality or pedestrian crash rate, as well as bicycle crash rate, is double that of the state. So that's a pretty hefty increase. So those are some of our main areas of focus with these types of things. So yeah, and then also within that time, traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries are on the rise nationally. But within Athens-Clarke County, the number of fatal crashes increased 300% from 2017 to 2021, whereas the state of Georgia only saw a 31% increase. So that's huge. It's an epidemic on our roadways. So data shows that high-speed corridors and intersections contribute to a significant portion of severe crashes, and that's why the speed management program will help reduce those crashes and the severity of those crashes. The last little thing here, other communities who have implemented Vision Zero strategies have seen measurable reductions in crashes and fatalities. And in the last couple of years, I believe there's a city in New Jersey that has actually reached Vision Zero, where they've had 0 serious injury and fatal crashes. And that's just a huge win. Overseas, there's a lot of success as well. Next slide. So this really gets into detail about those 3 areas, plus the couple things here that I added on. So, as I said, capital safety improvements, those are major investments, major infrastructure upgrades. A speed management program, beat that horse all day, but slower speeds reduce severity. Road safety audit implementation. We are identifying critical safety issues through road safety audits, even now when we don't have funding to implement these improvements. So we have a log of things. We try to apply for grants. We always put in a TSPLOST application, and we're going to keep doing it every however often, 5 years that we do it. There's also an opportunity for advanced signal and intersection upgrades, as long as they're outlined within our safety action plan. And then public engagement and education is a really important aspect of Vision Zero. Engineering alone won't solve the problem. We need to communicate with people and make sure that they understand what they can do and how they can contribute to our safer roadways. Next. Here's a budgetary breakdown. The main thing here, these are general cost categories. We won't know the actual cost of implementation until we have a finalized project list. Either way, this is the amount that we're voting on. It doesn't have to stay broken down in these specific buckets of major safety is 7 million, speed management's 2, RFA is 1.5.
1 minute remaining.
We basically just pulled those numbers from the things that you see here, but ultimately we'll have 10.5 million for construction, and that can be leveraged in whatever that plan kind of lays out for us. And we are going to try to stick to this ratio at least to ensure that. Go next. So, community impacts. Safer streets make stronger communities. Y'all can read this later. Next slide. This funding, it's not just about infrastructure, it's about saving lives, reducing costs, and ensuring that safety improvements reach the areas that need it most. Next. And then equity considerations. At the end of the day, equity in transportation means making sure safety isn't a privilege, it's a basic right for every community. So that next slide just shows we hit almost all of them. The Inner city travel options,
Thank
none of ours are gonna really hit that, so. Thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, in terms of the speed management program, I'm sure, you know, as many of us know, like roads, a lot of times the reason for people speeding, or at least like if it's a really consistent problem on roads, it's like the design of the road, you know, straight, too wide, too whatever. Will any of this funding help kind of reform the design of those roads, or will it mostly be those, because you mentioned speed, like signs that say like your speed is blank, and you mentioned speed humps, I think. Are there going to be any other measures as to like improving the design of roads themselves or anything like that?
Yeah, so as part of the safety action plan that we're developing right now, they're actually building a speed management toolkit. This is basically, here's a type of road and here's the context of that. So let's say a rural highway. Here are the things that FHWA, the state of Georgia, and other local communities say is a good way to keep speeds within the speed limit. So it could be, you know, narrower lanes. It could be, you know, rumble strips to help stop drifting vehicles. You know, in like local roads, for instance, we could do speed tables, but we wouldn't want a speed table on 441, right? Especially on an area that has a lot of emergency vehicle access, because, you know, worst thing that an ambulance could do is hit 3 speed tables on the way to the hospital while they're trying to save your life. So we want to, you know, make sure that our applications on all the various roadways and contexts are applied to that. So ultimately, you know, you do have entire corridors, and you could rebuild an entire corridor and make it slower speed or reduce the speed at least along there. You can also do spot treatments along the way. Ultimately, with that toolkit, as well as like a prioritized list of speed reduction measures, we'll be able to get that figured out, and it'll be very specific within the plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You said you was implementing about speeding. We all know that majority of the wrecks are really not being dealt with speeding. Most of them being dealt with not paying attention. Because especially in Athens, most wrecks are not on the loop. Most wrecks are not on 441. Most of our wrecks are in direct downtown or out a little outer ninth area, you know, east side. My question was that would have been more of your presentation would have been more projected on the inner than the outer. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so speeding is also a major issue on those on those inner roads as well. Police clocked a vehicle on West Broad Street, right there, basically between downtown and Alps, going 140 miles an hour a couple of years ago. They clocked Lexington Highway like 120 miles an hour. People are speeding on a lot of our roads, and they're doing it on roadways that it's easy to speed on. You know, if you have a winding mountain road, you're not gonna be able to hit 120. You know, ultimately, a lot of our crashes are related to distracted driving, but we also have a higher ratio of the driving under the influence, and we also have a high ratio. It's not higher than the state of Georgia as a whole. We're about on par there, but it is still a pretty significant percentage of our crashes that are speed related. I don't have those percentages. I can get them.
Okay, that's what I think the percentage between, you know, like you're saying, the death of speeding from that drug related through, you know, or just something just happened. That's what I was, you know, trying to figure out.
We could probably pull those statistics and send them through the committee if there's a specific.
Mr. Braden, did you have I'm sorry, we had 2 more.
Yeah, let's.
Her hand was up.
Can we get a short list of like maybe 3 to 5 of your top priorities of like what locations?
So we won't have the specific locations until like the plan is completed, but we could give you a list of the highest crash locations or segments.
Yeah.
We could do something. There's some safety analysis things that we could run. Yes.
Okay, I did the math, 75 deaths, 6,000 injuries. can we get documentation of where those were and the numbers?
So, on just the fatal crashes or the serious injury as well?
Injuries as well.
Okay,
14,000 for Tiffany. 1,200 injuries and 14 fatalities. I think I did 15. If I can just get a breakdown of where those occurred, that would be helpful.
okay,
Daniel, if you want to just send that to me, I can distribute it to you.
excellent. Yeah, I'll try to pull some numbers together. Sometimes the way that you view these things, it gives a very specific answer based on the very specific question. So it may have to be back and forth, and that's okay.
We can do that.
Yeah.
We can do that. All right, thank you, Daniel.
Thanks. We got 5 minutes for the next one.
All right, we'll take another couple of minutes.
So, we'll do off screen. I want to pull about us getting more data doesn't actually give me that. Yeah.
Please.
Please start my timer.
Go.
Good.
All right, everybody ready?
Go.
Let's go.
Great. Our focus today, go on to the next slide. Today, this presentation now is going to be about why smart city technology is essential for our community. Next. All right, so this is a comprehensive initiative to modernize Athens-Clarke County's transportation system. Deploying smart city transportation technology will incorporate advanced technologies to enhance traffic management, improve efficiency and emergency response, and create safer streets. We're all about safer streets. Also, I'm going to say technology a lot. So technology-driven improvements reduce congestion and improve mobility for all users. This aligns with national trends in transportation innovation and Athens-Clarke County's long-term goals, and it prepares our infrastructure for future growth and evolving transportation needs. Next. So current traffic signals are use outdated time of day schedules that don't adapt to real-time conditions. So what that means is if there's a special event in town, or if there was like a construction project one street over and that road is now experiencing increased traffic congestion, our signals don't know that. They don't know that they need to adapt to allow for more efficient movement, and everyone gets stuck in, you know, the gridlock that Athens experiences for 10 to 20 minutes every day. I know it's longer than that, I'm just joking. Without connectivity, diagnosing and fixing signal issues requires on-site visits, delaying responses. So we have, I think, 2 signal techs in Athens, and they are in charge of fixing all of our signals. So they have to go out to the signal cabinet box and make updates there. As ACC grows by an estimated 30,000 residents by 2045, we must invest in a more responsive, future-proof system. Next. So key project elements, fiber optic network expansion. So this is the backbone for all smart traffic systems. You really, they have to communicate to each other, and you have to have fiber to do that. This adds 45 miles of fiber to support those systems, and the locations of that fiber is based on a prioritization methodology that will be determined once we have the funding. Adaptive traffic signals, so AI-driven signals, or even just technology signals that adjust in real time based on traffic. That's one of the other key project elements. Then there's also some safety and efficiency enhancements. Connected vehicle infrastructure enables communication between vehicles and signals. Saw a really cool presentation where there was like a LiDAR radar on top of the signal, and it could see a person on a bicycle next to a car, and it sent a signal to that car to say, there's a bicyclist next to you. And they have something on their heads-up display that just basically said, watch out, there's a person here. So sometimes there's sensors within the cars to detect that stuff, but also there's technology within our infrastructure, our transportation system that can detect those things and communicate that to those connected vehicles. Also, connected vehicles seem like it's brand new. They've been around since the early 2000s, and they've really been mass produced. Most vehicles in the last decade are connected in some way to send their data and communicate with our infrastructure, if our infrastructure can do it. Advanced pedestrian and bike detection. So there are sensors out there that improve visibility and protection for non-motorized users. I'm talking like a signal that sees that there's a group of people waiting to cross, and it cuts all the signals for all the cars, allows for that group of people to cross. And then once they're safely across, you know, if one person is using a roller or wheelchair, it will slow the delay on that crossing timer so that that person can get fully across the road before it lets cars go. Then there's emergency and transit priority systems. The old school way of doing this would have been, there's a button in the car and you push it and it turns the light green. That's not necessarily how those systems are made anymore. It's usually automated, it's within the vehicle, and it's within the signal. And so that's something that if a transit bus is behind schedule, then that light will actuate to be green to allow for that bus to catch up to stay on time. If they're behind schedule, there's no need for that because, or if they're on time and on schedule, there's no need for that because transit also doesn't want their buses getting there early because then they're missing people who are probably banking on that bus being there at a certain time. Next. So then there's real-time traffic information. So this is really essentially digital signs, mobile integration for drivers. It's communicating our real-time experiences on the road to navigation systems in those cars. Google basically already does this, and it tells you what all the other Google users who are using the maps are using when you're navigating with their systems. But if you're not using their platform or their map, it's not always telling you exactly what is actually going on the roads. And also, it'll sometimes send people through these roads that aren't really meant to be cut throughs, but they're sending them through cut throughs because that's what the Google has figured out. And it's like, hey, let's test this road out. So they're gathering data all the time. This allows us to kind of have that information more in our control, where we can say, yeah, you're going to get a slight delay here, but this is what you can expect to experience here. There's also environmental monitoring that could happen, tracking air quality and emissions for data-driven sustainability efforts. There's a lot of sustainability grants in the past few years, and our goals for sustainability within our community to increase the air quality. Right there on the roadways is a good spot to monitor and see what impacts our traffic is having on that. Then there's smart pedestrian crossing, which is automated detection for safer crossings. So that could be more mid-block versus like at a traffic signal. And then having more safe infrastructure for people to be able to cross in those mid-blocks. Then data analytics, that really allows us to parse through all this data, make decisions that are data-driven, and ultimately deliver better quality roadways. Our traffic signal guys, instead of being out on the road, fixing all of the cabinets, could actually be in there working through timing and, identifying patterns that can, ultimately allow for us to have more efficiency on the roadways. Also, cybersecurity is really important. The transportation infrastructure is one of the main backbones of the city, and ensuring that we have proper cybersecurity on that infrastructure is just so important. Next. So that's a breakdown in what we're asking for. So high-speed communication to support real-time traffic management with the fiber installation, modernized traffic signals at 100 intersections that improves efficiency and safety. The advanced detection systems deploy sensors for enhanced vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle detection at key crossings. This will be however many crossings we can get, but this isn't at every crossing. And then enables the vehicle to infrastructure, V2I, communication that enables traffic signals to interact with connected vehicles for safer travel. Variable message signs that just provides real-time traffic updates to people on the roads and helps us communicate safety alerts to drivers. And then the central management system is really the centralized platform for monitoring and optimizing the traffic flow. So ACC currently operates with minimal staff, just 2 technicians, all of our traffic signals. The national standards recommend, I believe it's 77 devices per staff person. How many devices do we have per staff person now? Do you know?
77.
That's currently?
Yeah. How many do we?
7 per technician. The national standard is 35 per technician.
Got it. So we have double the number of traffic devices per technician in our county. If you've ever gone through an intersection and you said, man, who's doing this? Like, call it in. Because
1 minute.
purely relate, throws me off.
Sorry.
Anyways, yeah, call it in.
Police department.
So if it's not funded, we'll have increased congestion, longer commutes, higher emissions as the population grows. Ongoing safety risks for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers, missed opportunities for state and federal funding for transportation innovation, and then higher long-term costs of infrastructure continues to age and become inefficient. Yeah. Next. So equity considerations, this will be worked into the prioritization as well. And ensuring safe and efficient travel allows everyone to meet their daily needs without unnecessary delays or safety concerns. And then that last one is this project supports safely move around Athens and built and natural infrastructure goals. So you can see we didn't hit those goal area ones, but
Time has elapsed.
doing a bunch of stuff. Questions?
I have one.
Yes.
So this project is very interesting to me. I think there was two pieces of paper that we didn't have, Mr. Chairman, that were up on the screen that weren't on our thing. I wonder if we could get those. Okay. But you mentioned that, and I was trying to pay attention to the budget. The V21.
Oh, V2I.
Yeah, you tell me again.
Vehicle to infrastructure communication.
Okay.
So that allows our signals and infrastructure on the roadways to communicate to the vehicles. And it can basically alert drivers with the technology within their vehicle of surrounding hazards on the roadway, or like I said earlier, a Doppler radar that picks up that there's a pedestrian or a bicyclist that's walking out on the roadway. It'll alert them, hey, watch out. So.
And based on your budget here, 45 miles of cable, there's no land acquisition needed?
Most likely not. It should be within the public right of way on the existing.
My question is this, who will have direct, since it's smart, this is dealing with smart city transportation, who will have control over the overall, what controls the overall system? Because like, for instance, like, does the police department have access to this, or who all have access to the system for the lighting system?
So going back to that budget sheet, maybe, there's a central management system hardware that's kind of spec'd out there.
She was on the right page.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
I was.
Central management system hardware. So the part of all this is, you kind of have your neural network of like communication with the fiber, and then there's safety things along the way that are gathering the data. And then there's the central management system. Ultimately, that all comes back into the traffic control center and a TCC. That is a closed, it's not connected to the internet. It's completely separated so that, hackers and cybersecurity, it's the most secure that it can be. So that way we can't.
Go to Lexington Highway, we'll give you all a tour of the TCC. It's a really cool shop.
Yeah, and then as far as access to the data, there's a lot of data privacy things written into a lot of these programs where there's actually like laws to prevent the data that is the most personal data from being even given to us. And so a lot of times
That's what I was trying to get at. Who, if you hold data from the lights, who does the data goes to in
Athens-Clarke County.
Now, it's gotta go farther than Athens-Clarke County.
No, he's saying it's a close.
Yeah, it's a closed system.
It's gonna be a closed system, so that mean you don't have nobody in state or federal.
Not that I know of. Do you guys have an answer for that that's more specific?
It's protected under the ACC IT department.
So does police or any other federal agencies or anything have access to the data?
ACCPD can have access to that, but that's the only internal.
If there's an agreement ahead of time and depending on what.
County Police Department, correct?
They don't at the present time. That's something I suppose we could set up.
Right, yeah, so.
But see, I know how that works.
So
That's why I didn't want to round away from it. But I know how that works. Soon, next thing you know, the system goes into the hands of the police department now.
Right, and that's why we have that.
Access to PD's cameras, they do not have access to our cameras.
Exactly.
That's what
So we have access to PD's cameras to see roadway conditions, and for that only. They do not have access to our data. Ours is on a closed system. No one else has access to it, so.
That's wrong.
Fiber lines above ground or below ground?
Below.
But it can be both.
You can do both.
I mean, the $12 million, is it more expensive to put them underground?
I think it depends on the context of the situation.
Depends if there's already conduit there. It's so easy to just run it existing, but yes, usually if it's.
Okay, so if it's above ground, if you had to go above ground in a certain area, Millage Avenue, say,
Right.
and a tree falls on it, do all the lights go out?
No, we just want to be connected, talking to the signal next to it,
We,
correct?
we typically try to get redundancy in our system, have two routes back to the TCC. So it would be connected to another fiber somewhere, and we shouldn't lose connectivity.
Okay.
Okay, that's.
Great question.
Daniel, you said something, there's something in here about, that contracted staff, for, fixing lights or something, stuff like that. Do you have like a sense of how much annual spend is on outside help to get lights back up?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand.
Traffic signals, do we have an idea? Do we ever contract with outside agencies like contractors to help us with traffic signal work orders?
Not for basic maintenance or repairs, only if we have maybe like a major event such as a hurricane come in, where most of the time it's going to affect a lot of GDOT infrastructure. So we can rely on the state access, GMA, that kind of thing. But as far as minor repairs and maintenance, no, all in-house.
I have two questions. One, is a question for like most of the projects that were presented. Is there a way that we could get a synopsis of like the area of coverage? I see the 45 miles of optic cable installation, but this specific, are we speaking of? And the second question is, has a more cost-effective approach such as wireless networking, as far as intranet connectivity been entertained? We're talking about 45 miles of optic cable installation, which is with the weather and conditions like people mentioned, is only bound to eventually reach some level of impact as well as maintenance of underground through simple wear and tear. So has the wireless factor of this been, because I know this is used in other cities and smart cities as well that use this technology, has that been entertained?
We have, yeah, you go ahead.
The two questions, we do have a map we can provide that shows the existing fiber, and then we would be prioritizing kind of like spokes on a wheel, branching out from there. As far as wireless, we have tried it before. It's not as reliable or fast as that. It's that actual connection.
Yeah, and you need real-time data, and we don't get that with cellular service.
Gotcha, okay. Not even 5 gigahertz or the.
We haven't. Anything to add to that?
Well, cellular and wireless it opens up for outside access.
Right.
I mean, it can be breached. The closed fiber system protected by the ACCIT department has protocols to protect, all data.
Okay, so the fiber optics being used strictly because security, that's like the main layer.
Plus you have the ongoing cost of paying that data and cellular service, which constantly goes up every year because we're pulling such a large amount of data and video through that. They charge us based on how much is downloaded. So it's a lot more than your typical cell phone coverage.
Okay, the question segment has elapsed. If you have more questions, if you will, just write them down for us so you can communicate them back with me. And I can get clarification from the departments if necessary. Yeah.
Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Daniel.
Okay.
presentation. And we got a traffic signal placement program.
Good evening, everyone. I'm George Spearing, the Signal Systems Engineer. And I'm going to present to you the program of the Traffic Signal Infrastructure Replacement Program. And get the next slide. Many of our older signals do not meet the minimum height restrictions. Some are so low, and that's due to the poles were short. And because back in the 60s and 70s, which is how old some of these signals are, the signal heads were actually small. They were 8-inch heads. Each indication was only 8 inches tall. Now they're 12 inches. So, you know, a signal head is 3 feet tall instead of 2 feet tall. So with the shorter poles, we can't even raise the height of the signal. So we're having signals that are being hit by trucks and impaired visibility, and it creates a lot of safety issues. So this project is to replace the infrastructure, which includes the underground conduit, the signal poles, the overhead wiring, cabinets, and anything that's causing maintenance issues. The wiring in the older signals is exposed to elements which is likely to be brittle because after about 10 years of being in the UV and underground, it starts to break apart. Then we have signals going in flash. We have traffic signal technicians that have been actually shocked trying to work on this equipment. So it creates a big safety hazard. The newer, go back.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. The newer signals include safety elements, including, of course, LED signal heads, the back plates for nighttime visibility. I know you've seen it with the yellow stripe around them. The flashing yellow arrow operation and audible PED signals. So the audible PED buttons, which is a new standard that was about a couple of years ago, that any new or upgraded PED systems must have an audible PED button. That's a talking button. Signal heads are exposed to malfunction and the UV causes the doors to break on them because it's plastic. They become brittle. They only typical lifespan is about 8 years. The operating budget that we get now for the traffic signals only allows us to buy one signal head per intersection. That's all. They're about $600. If you spread that out over all the signals that we have, that's all we can spend it on. This project request is to rebuild 7 traffic signals per year. The project total is, we're asking for 7.6 million to rebuild those 7 signals. Go ahead to the next one.
Excuse me.
Like I said before, rebuilding the aging traffic signals includes poles, control equipment, signal head, signal wire, and all the infrastructure. We've got conduit underground that is broken, it's come apart. We can't even pull the wire through there. So without that, you can't even replace any of the wiring at the intersection, because if you can't pull new wire through the conduit, some of it we can't even get out. It won't even come out from underground. So there's no way to, rebuild the traffic signal. Athens-Clarke County currently maintains 177 traffic signals. That's 91 that are owned by ACC Gov, 6 by UGA, and 80 by GDOT. The average age of the ACC-owned signals is 24 years. 32 of those traffic signals are more than 30 years old. The national standard lifespan for a traffic signal is only 13 years. So every 13 years, we should be rebuilding the infrastructure of a traffic signal. So we're way behind, way behind. With more age, traffic signals continue to malfunction more often, creating safety hazards for technicians. Wait for them. TSPLOST 2023, we requested 13 million to try to rebuild 10 traffic signals. The funding allocated resulted with 2.9 million, and we're able to rebuild 4 signals. This is the first time, 2023 was the first time that this project was ever awarded. We've had it presented to TSPLOST every time before that, but it was turned down. So we're hoping to continue this and keep going with these rebuilds. With the next. The budget impact or more effective use of general fund operating budgets. So we can distribute the operating budget more reasonable in the maintenance and repairs that we have now. The community impact will be improved reliability and operations of traffic signals and reduce delay for all roadway users. We can enhance the safety through backplates, like I said, and pedestrian signals, and minimize the impacts of malfunctioning signals and overtime. Which is, of course, the impacts of not funding include structural failure of traffic signal poles. We've got some signal poles that are rusting on the inside, and we have no idea, how much longer they have. They were put in back in the 70s, early 80s. Increased frequency of signal malfunctions, increased spending of overtime. We spend a great deal of overtime. Every year, we exceed our overtime budget just responding to signal maintenance issues. The inability to signalize intersections that justify traffic safety installation, safety and liability issues of the infrastructure. By 2026, there will be another 20 intersections within the 20 to 25-year range, past that 13-year lifespan. So that's just within one more year. Material and installation costs have increased another $1 million since the project was last submitted for 2023 TSPLOST. The cost of the equipment and material is going up about 15 to 20% per year. Go to the next. Rebuilding the outdated traffic signals will reduce the capital funding that currently will never reach the goal of sustainability due to the number of intersections past the recommended lifespan of 13 years. So with our operating budget and capital funds, we'll never catch up. We'll constantly have outdated signals and never catch up with the old ones. A rebuild priority list is based on the quantity of non-standard equipment, and a prioritization matrix was created last year and approved by Mayor and Commission. That allows us to rate the intersections based on 5 criteria. That's infrastructure, maintenance, which includes the call outs and flash history, the standards, which is flashing yellow arrow, backplates, height, audible PEDs, crosswalks. Some intersections, signalized intersections don't even have crosswalks. Other things on that, the other 2 things are the volumes of traffic and pedestrian traffic, and safety, the crash history of the intersection. So those 5 criteria will rate the intersection based on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the worst. And like I said, that matrix was approved by Mayor and Commission, and we will continue to use that from now on, unless something changes and where we need to include other criteria. But that's what we rated the 4 intersections for the 2023 TSPLOST, and we're rating the next 7 on the list using that matrix. This project strongly supports 8 sections of the Mayor and Commission strategic commitments. Especially reduction in travel time.
1 minute remaining.
Results in less time spent on the roadway. And updated traffic signals offer the ability to use a smart connected technology, which is one of the things I want to point on is the previous presentations were to project smart technology for the intersections, but we've got to have the infrastructure at the traffic signal to implement those. So we got to get that infrastructure replaced with the conduit so that we can pull in the new wiring and the cabinets that can support this technology. Pedestrian detection at intersections will reduce the wait times for walking access, especially during high volume times. So is there any questions?
So the previous presentation on the smart technology has a line item for traffic signal upgrades for the smart technology. If we funded that, do we also need to fund yours? Because they're saying 100 traffic lights in their project.
Yes, that upgrade does not include, the upgrade under that project does not include the infrastructure. This project consideration is just for the infrastructure of the signal, which is the conduit, the poles, the sustaining structure of
We all
traffic
split
signal.
it into two
Yes.
different components.
So the smart city project is for the technology and the equipment at the intersection.
Would whatever you replace this stuff with, would you only select things that would be compatible with the smart stuff, even if this didn't get funded, so that in the future it would be ready for that smart system?
Yes, we always rebuild the infrastructure with spare, so that way it's capable of handling the future. Because we're probably not going to get to the point where we're replacing signals every 13 years. I would love to, it would be great. But we're probably looking at, we put in the infrastructure so that it can handle at least another 20, 25 years, realistically. So, yes, the room will be there. The conduit will be there, everything will be there for the smart city installation.
Yeah, you mentioned that ACC manages some UGA and GDOT intersections. Is there some, do they have cost share programs? Does GDOT have cost share programs for, rebuilding intersections? Stuff that, technically is owned by them. We said get 80.
There's 80 of them, yes. Athens-Clarke, GDOT owns those intersections and those traffic signals. They have a permit for them. And we maintain those, which is just the lowest form of maintenance. We keep them basically running and operating. We are able to install the timing and that kind of thing. But if we need equipment or if it needs a rebuild, we will approach GDOT for that consideration. What I failed to mention was on our list, consideration for this project is only the ACC Gov signals. So that's, the TSPLOST money, the funding will go to just ACC Gov signals.
And we do have a service agreement with UGA where they pay us to maintain theirs as well.
Me?
Yes.
You had mentioned that at this rate, we'll never catch up. Of course, I guess what I'm asking is the amount that you're receiving from the general fund or wherever you get your current funds, negative? So not negative, but is it not enough to be sustainable? I guess my question is, even if we give you this money today, if you're not getting enough money from the general fund or from wherever else to sustainably replace these for the future, would that work to catch you up, or would you eventually trail back into the same place that you're in now?
Yeah, so I could talk budget a little bit. So we would need maybe close to $1 million a year in our general fund, and we're getting 100,000, 150,000. So we're nowhere near, and we ask for that much every year. We ask to slowly move toward a sustainable amount. But it looks like for the foreseeable future, we're going to continue to ask for SPLOST and TSPLOST to help supplement.
Yes.
Is this a problem in terms of the funding to replace these? Is this something that's relatively new, like within the last 10, 15 years, or is this getting worse year out?
Our maintenance and response, of course, is going up. I've been doing this for 29 years, and I started off as a traffic signal technician. So I've worked on every signal here in Clarke County. But we have, when TSPLOST first started, we proposed a project to do this because, as Stephen said, that our operating budget is basically a slight maintenance operations. I mean, we can just do slight maintenance and that's all. And then we rely on a little bit of the capital funding to do some upgrades where we can go out and I can replace some signal heads and maybe a cabinet, but it's nowhere near enough to do the underground structure or the poles. Because that's where you get into, it could be $25,000 per pole to replace, or even it could be up to $60,000 to $70,000 if you're doing a mast arm, which we do prefer the mast arm because it gives more protection for the wiring. There's no exposed wiring to the UV elements. So, and that with the conduit is where the expensive part of it is. Of course, we can replace everything above ground but the poles. We can hang up new wiring, put a new cabinet, hang new heads. But all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on, you know, a continuous open wound until we get the infrastructure replaced. Because the infrastructure is what drives and holds up the intersection. So it's like with anything that's infrastructure. I mean, you can put new paint on a building wall that looks new, but if the interior walls are falling apart, you haven't really accomplished anything.
Okay, that concludes the question segment for this presentation. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't think so. They have this.
Yes.
All right, everybody back to their seat, our final presentation. And which one is this all of a sudden? Oh, right in front of me. Sign replacement program. All yours.
My name is Mike Dunbar. I'm the sign and marking engineer for Athens-Clarke County Traffic Engineering Department. And talking about the sign replacement program, this is a project that is a continuation of the 2023 sign replacement program project number 32. That was passed through our TSPLOST program. In 2023, we requested $4 million and received $750,000. Just show that. We'll slip two slides. And our sign replacement program replaces and upgrades street name signs, both overhead and ground mounted. Go back one. Our signs, the industry standard lifespan of a traffic sign is 10 years. Remember that for a second. Average lifespan is 10 years. There are approximately 33,000 signs maintained by ACC. Many residential signs have not been replaced since the neighborhoods were developed back in the 1970s. Current funding for approximately 200 signs, current funding allows for approximately 200 signs to be replaced annually. On a recurring basis, that provides a lifespan of 165 years per sign. Remember I said 10 years is the lifespan of a sign. Current funding, 165 years before those signs can be replaced. In addition to aging, traffic signs are often hit by errant vehicles, which further stretches available resources. And see here the project request. This is on a 5-year cycle, meaning if fully funded, this will replace approximately half of the signs in ACC. Then again, in 5 years, it would need to be funded again to just meet the 10-year lifespan. Next page. The sign replacement program replaces and upgrades street name signs, both overhead and ground mounted. The program installs signs that comply with high retroreflective standards as mandated by the federal law in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. With age, signs lose retroreflectivity, which reduces the visibility at night and under adverse weather conditions. With the loss of visibility, drivers are unable to clearly see the regulatory signs, the stop, the speeds, the yields, or the wayfinding signs such as street name signs. So remember that 10-year lifespan for retroreflectivity. Imagine trying to see a sign at night that is past that life cycle. We'll see some slides later on that show the difference in how signs are visible at night based on different retroreflectivity. Next slide. All right, so the sign on the left, it hasn't reached its 10-year lifespan, but it has been faded by the sun. So if the sun faces, if the sign faces the sun for more hours out of the day, the UV light damages the sign, reduces its reflectivity. Well, that sign wouldn't be clearly visible at night, but the sign on the right, which is fairly new, would be. Next slide. So our budget impacts more effective use of our general fund operating budgets, just like some of the other presentations like George. Our operating budgets, I would say, are anemic. As you can tell, 165 years to replace all the signs in the county, I would consider that anemic. Under our current capital program that Mayor and Commission has done, we replaced approximately 200 to 300 signs in addition to our operating budget. So we use that funds to just replace the older signs. Our operating budget, we're pretty reactive. If signs are damaged or signs are stolen, we use that money to replace them. Now, enhanced safety, improved visibility of signs under all conditions, particularly during adverse weather and at night. Compliance with federal retroreflectivity requirements decreases liability. All right, so the FHWA, which is the Federal Highway of Administration, sets the standard that all signs have to meet those retroreflective requirements. Now, most lawyers will tell you that tort liability is probably the biggest claims that a lawyer can have. And tort liability is the legal responsibility to compensate another person for the harm caused by their actions or negligence. The Kentucky Transportation Center did a study and said that the largest total claims in dollar amounts involving tort liability was for traffic control devices. So when we're out of compliance, we do have liability. Next slide. Now look at the picture on the right. It shows the degrading of retroreflectivity over time. So as you can see here, the different signs, there are signs here, here, and here that have passed their lifetime. Could not see that at night. If you come up to a four-way intersection and there's not overhead lighting, you're going to run right through it. That is with a light shining back on those signs. Now, go next slide. Now here, the picture on the left shows the different types of sign sheetings and the retroreflective properties. Or better yet, this could show you the stopping sight distance for vehicles under different stages of the sign life cycle. So DGQ, which is diamond grade, is the brightest or most reflective sign. Engineering grade would be the lowest acceptable sign sheeting. So just imagine it 45, 50 miles an hour. If it's a diamond grade sign, you can see that sign from 1,300 to 1,600 feet. If it's fading and still within that 10 years, that's down to 400 to 600 feet. 45 miles an hour, that's a second. So it doesn't take very long for somebody to, if they're not paying attention, if they don't see something, that they will, it will cause an accident. All right, next picture, next slide. All right, and equity considerations. The replacement that we have been doing is based on data-driven replacement process, based on the sign's age and condition. Many regulatory and street name signs are beyond their useful lifespan. Older signs lack sufficient reflectivity, which degrades the safety of the roadways and impedes the wayfinding of emergency response vehicles. Now, retroreflectivity that I've been talking about, if you don't know, retroreflectivity is when you shine a light on an object and that object shines back to the light. So no matter what type of car, the height of the car, if your headlights hit that sign, the retroreflectivity of that sign makes the sign shine back to the road user. So once that's degraded, we can no longer see that sign in nighttime visibility.
1 minute remaining.
All right, next question. This project strongly supports 9 of the 12 project selection criteria. The project will improve equity of capital improvements, protect the investment of the community, the transportation infrastructure, reducing traffic congestion and time spent traveling, improving access to public facilities, increase access to public transit systems, and improves air quality and promotes alternative vehicle use. Questions? Yes.
So the request is for about 4.5 million over the 5-year project. About how many signs does that actually cover?
That would in hopefully it would cover half of them. So 17,000 signs. We would hope that it would cover. Yes.
English. When you said 17,000. Is that a specific sign? Is that a variety of different signs that we replace? It's probably a different song.
So so the average cost is around $300 a sign. So we just take that average cost. Our current 2023 project inventoried every sign within Athens-Clarke County. Those signs will get replaced based on a scoring matrix, which a consultant went out and inventoried, took pictures of every sign, rated those signs based on the retroreflectivity of the signs and their importance, whether, you know, a stop sign might be more important than a do not litter sign. You know, just regulatory signs is required by law. So regulatory comes first, and then wayfinding, finding out three names. We want everybody to be, EMS is called. We want them to be able to find you as quick as possible. We want them to see your street name, to know where somebody's at. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a comment and a question since this is the last of these projects. Number one, this particular ask and then the ask for streetlights, it's frustrating that you're here. And I know it's frustrating for you to have to be here, but things involving signs and streetlights at work are some of the basic elements of government. And it's ridiculous that we're not putting more money into this. But anyway, the total ask for all of these projects from transportation and public works is coming up to $66.5 million roughly. And I know you've all seen the amount we have to allocate. So it's either one or two things. Is there a ranking you have for these projects, or is it a matter of you would like to have just a little bit of funding for all of them? And if you did get that, would that actually make a substantial difference?
Yeah, I think it's that second option that we would really be hoping for. Obviously, not everything can be funded. It's that idea of getting the worst of each of these tackled first, but also getting our foot in the door, right? So having a little bit of funding is better than nothing. We found that gives us the opportunity to go out for grants. It also puts this on the books this year so that we can, in future years, when we're right back in front of a different committee, we can say, this is what we were able to do this past time. You just give us a little bit more this time, we're able to do more. So it shows that sustainable. And I agree. I mean, if we have to keep coming back every 5 years for basic infrastructure, that's not a sustainable funding source. Hopefully one day we'll be able to get this done with a funding source that is sustainable. But until then, we are going to be right back in front of y'all asking for as much as we can get for each of these. But yes, that second option of fund a little bit, spread the funding is what we prefer.
I got a question. It's just kind of, it might seem mundane, but, you know, we do have a lot of projects that could use a cleanup. A sign is one of those things that we've heard today. Most of the other ones are not. But a sign possibly could be subject to prisoner workforce, community work to scrub and wash signs. Does that buy you any time at all on these? I know the relectivity, whatever you're talking about. Yeah, when it goes, it goes. But you know, I've seen signs all over the county. They're just mildewy and they're dirty, and they probably could increase the visibility by 10 times if you just washed them.
Right. We have tried that in the past. We have used inmates to go around in neighborhoods and wash those signs. It was an issue and a help. We have 4 sign and marking technicians. It takes so much time out of one person's day to babysit somebody. I mean, by the regulations that they're put through and what they have to do, just have an inmate with them reduces what we can accomplish in a day.
Yeah, I understand. It was just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, and we've tried it. We've thought the same thing. We've tried it.
I think just to help to give it more meaningful to that, the fact that most of these signs have passed the 10-year mark, even if you watch them, you still won't get reflectivity. Now it's a good idea. Revisit that program once we have a good funding to replace what you can't read it anymore. The signs, we can't read them anymore.
Right.
One thing too, I'd add quickly, I personally have watched some of our stop signs, and what you'll notice is the suds turn red. You remove more of the ink from that stop sign, and it which hastens the demise. That is a great thought.
All right, guys, that concludes questions for this one. If you do have follow-up questions, please feel free to follow up with him or email them to me and I will get them clarified and then we can send them out to the whole group. So we have a list. I did send out the invite and the documentation associated with today's meeting. So respond to me or I'll be happy to give you my email address, whatever.
Thank you.
Josh?
Thank y'all.
Yeah, thank you.
I just like to say thanks for all.
Chairman.
So just as a reminder, I'm looking at public art and all laws for transportation. Is that mandatory? Is that coming from the mayor?
It is an ordinance. And
We have the same.
I was telling one of our members, I was thinking at the early end of this, it was capital buildings being built. It is now capital everything. And it's in there. It would take an act of the mayor and commission to eliminate that. That's built in. And
$200 and $800.
It's more than this one too.
that is there. Be a part of it.
That's something we can recommend. I'm looking at these projects here and.
Yeah, we can
Give us some more stuff.
We can ask anything, like you can sue somebody involved, but it's gonna be work. In these things, like I said, I for the public art. I'll hang on and we'll have a quick discussion before we adjourn. But okay, why don't we jump back into the meeting? So how did that feel overall, the way we did this? We got 6 in today. Kept on, and thank you, Liz, for the greatest monitor I've ever seen. It made my life, I didn't have to do anything, except say what she said louder. But thank you, that helps. But so we keep these things going. Did that format seem fine? Did 10 minutes seem fine? Did 5 minutes for questions seem fine? So if that's got everybody nodding their heads, and we'll do the same thing next time then.
If anything, I would say maybe cut down on the time between the projects.
Yeah.
I mean, if this next one's ready to rock and roll, let's go.
Yeah.
So that'd be up to me. So I'll go ahead and do that. I was trying to kind of figure out, I was trying to hear if your conversation maybe over here was about this or not. I heard Jed talking about anything he was talking about.
We don't need to wait that extra 30 minutes.
Yeah, no, okay.
And I mean, in all honesty, I don't know that we could condense in and get 7 or 8 in if we don't take all that time.
So is the preference then to displace that one set of 5 minutes then with more Q&A or to move into the next project?
Go to the next project.
I go to the next project.
Okay, all right.
I give everyone, we have one more question. I would give 1 minute.
Yeah.
So give 1 minute to each Q&A session. So you get that one more question in and then just the rest of it, the other 4 minutes.
So 6 minutes Q&A.
One thing I would note is everyone tonight was from Transportation and Public Works. We will be exchanging people that are doing presentations at future meetings. It will be like people from different departments or people from different groups, residents, et cetera. So they may need some time to transition from one person to another, maybe not necessarily 5 minutes, but I just wanted to bring that up as a consideration in this.
You know, the thing that was really sobering to me tonight was these things were all transportation.
Yeah.
And to me, man,
It's a traffic.
what a misjustice of our.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the other 65 are gonna be like, but these are important projects. And, you know, you only got so much money and you only got so, I mean, and I think you asked him, what if we give a portion of what they're asking for certain folks? At least it won't throw them out with the muddy water. It'll allow them to keep at least.
Yeah.
But I mean, that sign thing was sobering to me. 33,000 signs in Athens-Clarke County?
I believe that. Yeah,
No, this is just common maintenance.
it's common maintenance.
But why is this not in the city operating budget?
Yeah, that's.
And that's what we were talking about, and that's what's so frustrating, because it's not even, in my understanding is SPLOST aren't even necessarily supposed to be for maintenance.
Right.
We're not supposed to be doing this. Now granted, reality is reality, but.
I think it's a shame that they have to even be up here, like so many people mentioned, and like, you know, this needs to be part of the general budget, and it sucks that it's not. It needs to be. You know, what I wrote down in my notes is like, it feels like specifically with one of the people he was talking about how like they're never gonna catch up. Feels like we're, you know, trying to fill a pit that keeps sinking and keeps collapsing more. Even if we throw some dirt in, if it keeps falling more, it's not really gonna help that much. So I might have a more controversial opinion here, but I think the projects that are like very clearly need to be in the general fund, we need to make a clear effort to indicate to the mayor and commission this needs to be part of the general fund, and not also because this needs to be approved by voters. And if voters are like, oh, all of this sales tax increase is just like things that should be covered under the general fund, that's not gonna be
Yeah, are they gonna vote
super
for it?
appetizing.
Like, for instance, I told the gentleman, I said, all of you are in the same area. I said, why don't you, see about trying to get a special, SPLOST for, so you can get it forward and get it to where you're ahead. And where you're ahead, like say, for instance, all these projects together is supposed to be almost 50 million. I said, why don't you just go ahead and do a SPLOST, special SPLOST. It don't have to be something that's ongoing, a special SPLOST, let's say it lasts a year. A special SPLOST of a half a cent, special SPLOST, you wouldn't even see it, and it still would get out of the 100 million that needs to be done to take care of it. Plus they'll be ahead. I said that's something that you should think about.
You know, the real life is when each one of them told us what their staff is.
Yeah.
I mean, and imagine if what was the sign guy? They had two? I mean, and they're barely meeting.
35, I think 30 something required.
Barely meeting budget.
They have 70 something for two people.
And, you know, I think of what we discovered here, we need to send a message to the mayor and commission. I'm thinking about the safety of, everything that was talked about today is plain safety. And then I'm looking at each budget and I stopped counting. But public art, $60,000, public art, $90,000.
Yeah. That's a county requirement for.
This,
That needs to go.
No.
That needs to go away.
It needs to go away.
Well, does that include stuff like if they make a fancy bus stop
Yep.
Yes.
Meddling things like that.
Lines in the road, the rest of the art.
What we discover here, we need to let the mayor and commission know our opinion if we have one, if we have one. And at least they know. And I assume they would think the public would know, so.
But don't you think they're smart enough to realize with the general budget, they're sitting there saying, okay, we'll leave some projects that are so important and we'll see if the T-SPLOST people will fund them.
Did anybody see the last commission meeting?
I could see that.
Yes. I was there. You were there, so you knew exactly what I was talking about when I was there, right? I sat up there and told them y'all was wrong about taking all that money from T-SPLOST. That was on the last meeting. I said, if it's up to me, because y'all took the direct money, I would say no to it.
Well, and look.
I look at it like this. It should be, if you're going to take $200 million, and I'm just looking at the scenario. $200-something million, you're gonna take all of it, but 60?
They're using that money to maintain the roads. That's for potholes.
Still
maintaining nothing. This is what we do with
What about
right here.
traffic signals? What about the light?
We do our whole stuff come out of
If you would have spent the 200 million and not had this committee, there you go.
This is the balance where obviously,
This is our money last year.
I don't think anybody in the room is necessarily against art, or I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of conversations about bikes and things like that. But you have to balance that against the fact that we're talking about, we don't have enough signs that actually work. We don't have enough streetlights that actually work. And one of the things that he brought up that we need to definitely focus on, how much money, the millions of dollars we wind up losing in a case where we don't have a functioning stop sign in terms of reflectivity and someone's killed. Because I can tell you in those situations, their attorney for the deceased party is going to get in there and go, did that sign meet the minimum requirements? No. Then what are we even arguing about?
Yep.
Right.
Write the check.
Write the check.
Write the check. Write the check.
But at least we could make a record, we could let them know this is what we're hearing, this is what we see,
Yeah.
and they can hold.
And there are a couple of ways we can do that. First of all, you're all free and welcome to go to your commissioner and say, you won't believe the first day of presentations we had. Get their understanding, so you understand, I understand, we each kind of understand. Because I know from doing this side and that side and the other side, good people, there are things there and they can explain, well, this is why. It also may make them explain why was that paid for over there that maybe wasn't as important as a stoplight. We got hit with a good cold bucket of water on this, and I appreciate that this is actually what was decided to let us see at first. And then, ultimately, it's our recommendations. And what I'm liking hearing here is we're kind of a no-nonsense, seems like a no-nonsense group of people based on what's coming to my ears. There may be some things that we'd all love too, but it doesn't make a stoplight work any better. So we're gonna have to not vote for that. So the one way to send the message is, these are the ones we're recommending: stoplights, stop signs, this and that. And just boring, basic stuff, and getting that done. And all the others have to fall to the wayside because we can't get to it. Now, again, everybody gets their individual vote, and I don't believe we're gonna know how each other votes. It's just gonna be the main thing. But that's one way. But again, communication with your elected officials is always a good idea. And hopefully they know enough. They won't know everything about everything because they do get a lot. But hold them to it and say, we're hearing this officially, as well.
Yeah, I think it's gonna set an unfortunate and problematic precedent for us to, it is clear that this money needs to be paid for, that these projects need to be paid for. And at the same time, I think us spending our whole T-SPLOST budget after the 140 million is already spent on strictly maintenance. If we spend the 60 million on strictly maintenance, And this entire TSPLOST that we're asking voters to pay for becomes maintenance. It's gonna set an unfortunate precedent for the future where people, I mean, I can think of so many times that people have, in Atlanta, right, more MARTA tax happened recently. People voted in more MARTA tax because they're like, oh, it says, we're gonna do all these great improvements to MARTA. And then years later, there were no improvements because all the money went straight to maintenance. The money needs to be there for maintenance, but frankly, they need to allocate for that in the general budget. And I believe that stuff like traffic signage and traffic signal infrastructure improvements is something that the general budget needs to allocate for. They can't rely on us. They can't rely on a voter elected tax that's supposed to be a special infrastructure improvement tax to cover maintenance costs.
I'm sure we're gonna have some of those projects like the one you're talking about, but just to disagree to some extent, if I was a voter asked to, agree for this tax, and I'm sitting here looking at these things, or I just happen to know for whatever reason that these items that seem somewhat extraneous are on here, whereas these other items that are clearly needs that need to be taken care of are not being done through this SPLOST, that would make me very frustrated. Again, that's just my opinion.
And I'll also add in, it's very easy for us to say that the general budget, that these items should be covered. Virtually every local government across the country, right, is not meeting their maintenance needs. To actually meet those needs, you're gonna have to have increased revenue. So that's either gonna come from property taxes or what have you, right? Increasing revenue streams is wildly unpopular. And so to get voters to vote for it is always a challenge. I don't want us to just say, oh, that can be a general fund option because that might not be realistic, right?
Well,
I guess it's time for you to start living here rent free.
Well, I think when we in a scenario, I would hate for somebody to come to me and say, you're on TSPLOST, right? Did you know this, and this? Yes, I did. Why didn't you say something? And those commissioners do not get along. I can tell you that personally. I know about 5 of them. And if you go to, Melissa Lee, and say, look, you're not getting a bike lane, you start a war. But you could go, I know Melissa well enough, but look, we're gonna have to go past this bike lane right now because we have stop signs where somebody's gonna get killed if something is not done. But if we don't say anything, they're in their own little world. I know 6 of them in their own little world.
Well, they're listening to other constituents too,
They're listening to it, but I guarantee you, I think the 6 I know, they're very intelligent. 5 of the 6 I know are very intelligent people. And they would make a decision for the bet, because some have children, grandmothers. So on and so forth. Look, I could talk all night.
Yeah.
Well, now I gotta figure out what that one is that that can't tie their own shoes.
Okay, so we are set. I got one question though we do have to cover. I believe UGA UGA has spring break next week? I'm here, so I know that you're not gonna be here. Can everybody make it?
I'll be here.
We keep on working?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll hold that meeting. We'll just catch you up with it. That'll be fine. All right, good meeting.
Got to adjourn.
Adjourned.
Second.
Oh, we got it.
Second.